Welcome, everyone. I'm Thomas Hall, Executive Director of CleanStart, and I'm really glad that you're joining us today. For those of you that are new to us, CleanStart has been helping clean tech entrepreneurs and innovators bring their ideas to life here in California since 2005. What we do is connect founders, builders, and operators with the knowledge, relationships, and community they need to actually get things done in the space. Today's conversation is part of our Perspectives webinar series, practical, founder-friendly advice and discussion focused on what actually matters if you're trying to build a clean energy company in the energy transition right here in our region. Now, before we dive in, I want to take a moment to thank our sponsors, SMUD, Chico Start, Fresno State, River City Bank, Witten Law, and Banker Tilly. Their support is what makes events like this possible, and we're grateful for their continued commitment to growing the clean energy ecosystem in our region. Now, California has been making major investments in the future of zero emissions aviation, from funding clean technologies, infrastructure, and to supporting fleets, and also the communities that are impacted by pollution. The state is building a roadmap for cleaner skies. But where exactly is that public investment headed? How are programs evolving? And what does it mean for innovators, entrepreneurs, and fleet operators in the clean transportation space? That's what we're here to talk about today. I'll be joined by CleanStart co-founder Gary Simon, and we're thrilled to have as our featured guest someone who lives and breathes this stuff every day. Today, we're joined by Matt Williams from the California Air Resources Board, where he leads long-term strategy for investment in the heavy-duty transportation sector, helping shape how California funds and accelerates the transition to cleaner aviation, trucks, buses, and freight systems. He's at the center of the state's efforts to reduce air pollution and climate emissions from aviation, guiding programs like the 600 million Shift initiative to support zero emissions technologies and infrastructure. So everyone, please welcome Matt.
Awesome. My name is Matt Williams, and I am the lead staff for our long-term heavy-duty investment strategy at the California Air Resources Board, and I also work on our Sustainable Heavy-Duty Initiatives for Future Technology, or SHIFT program, where we are developing the next generation of clean heavy-duty technologies. That intro touched on a lot of stuff, so I'm going to try to integrate as much as I can in a short amount of time. Briefly, an introduction to the California Air Resources Board, or CARB. We are the responsible agency for reducing air pollution in the state of California and also the lead agency for combating climate change. We aim to deliver benefits beyond just emissions reductions, including supporting healthy communities, driving technology and market acceleration so that we have the technologies we need for a clean future, and growing the green economy. After all, the transition to a green future should be one that yields all of these benefits and more. Today, we have a slight focus on aviation. This isn't necessarily the focus of CARB's work, but the focus of some of mine, and certainly my own personal passion in aviation. I have become CARB's de facto aviation expert for incentives. In fact, I will be at the Lift Summit in Monterey next week, where I will be on a panel about zero emission aviation and workforce development to support that. So talking about aviation use, air travel is increasing, but aircraft are not getting any cleaner. And in fact, by 2037, total emissions are expected to more than double for most sources. This while almost every other source of emissions, both stationary and mobile, decreases. Aviation represents a specific problem for California because by and large, it's considered interstate transportation and is not in the immediate regulatory authority of CARB, a state agency, and is rather in the hands of the federal government. And as we all know, leaving things to the feds, even under the best administrations, doesn't always work so well. And especially in times like these, this is a serious challenge. So CARB has a few mechanisms of action to drive down emissions from aviation. And we do so using a three-pronged approach. By partnering with the aviation industry and academic institutions, we're already increasing the production and use of sustainable aviation fuel while setting the pathways to greater emissions reductions. We've long been a global leader in clean technology investment. CARB's Clean Transportation Incentives has invested billions in pre-commercial and early commercial solutions. And a part of Clean Transportation Incentives, the SHIFT program, which I mentioned earlier, has supported over 40 projects pushing the clean technology envelope, including an agricultural spray drone project with PICA, which I will touch on a little later. Many of these projects include workforce development and training components. And finally, CARB is beginning to explore regulatory options to reduce aviation emissions, including from ground support equipment and aircraft ground operations. That process recently started just last year, and they are gathering public engagement and comment with workshops and board consideration expected in 2027. Briefly, our funding mechanisms, the way it works is the legislature provides an appropriation to CARB when they want to. We do not have any control over what funding we get or how much it is, but the legislature will often give us some appropriation. There is only one appropriation that we always get, and that's from the Air Quality Improvement Program, which is between 30 and $40 million per year. That may sound like a lot to an individual, but in the scope of these programs and our total investment, it's not a whole lot. Annual appropriations get programmed through the annual funding plan. That's the process by which we actually program appropriations if they are not prescriptive and the legislature doesn't tell us exactly what programs the money should be put in. We get the opportunity to program that money through a public process. The annual funding plan, which again only deals with money and policy that has actually been appropriated, is complemented by the long-term heavy-duty investment strategy, and this is the document I lead. The heavy-duty investment strategy is not concerned with the present fiscal year. Instead, it looks forward in the coming 3 fiscal years as the scope. The heavy-duty investment strategy sets the goals for our investments, some of which I mentioned earlier, and it includes all of our tracking of technology and market status, which informs the recommendations provided by the strategy. The strategy recommends the priority technology categories or project types that are in greatest need of investment, and as well as the funding levels that we believe necessary to maintain momentum, not the entire amount needed to transition the whole sector, fix the whole economy, just the amount needed to maintain momentum. CARB runs a number of heavy duty incentive projects. The standout ones are the Clean Truck and Bus Voucher Incentive Project. This is our largest singular incentive project. Over $1 billion has been implemented to date. That program started, I believe, in 2009. Long running, that's just a cash on the hood program. You go to buy a zero emission truck from an eligible dealer. You get a voucher that discounts the purchase price. Everything is run by the dealers, makes it really easy for the fleets and operators that are purchasing the vehicles. We have a similar program for off-road equipment. That's the Clean Off-Road Equipment Voucher Incentive Project, or CORE. And then we also have equity-focused programs, part of that, like innovative small e-fleets. And then there's SHIFT, the Sustainable Heavy Duty Initiatives for Future Technology, and that is focused on bringing early and pre-commercial technologies to market. So that program has already allocated over $600 million across 35 projects. I think actually we're up to 42 now. Over 700 vehicles and equipment deployed. These range all types. We have port equipment, and we've had a battery electric locomotive on the slide. That was a world first hydrogen ferry that was deployed in the San Francisco Bay Area. We've had battery electric tugs and carbon capture and control systems, all sorts of stuff as part of the SHIFT program. These have been very successful in de-risking manufacturers to develop new technologies, bring them to market, and then get them out there. For example, that battery electric locomotive, world first. Now Wabtec, the manufacturer, has produced a Gen 2 based on learnings from our project, and they have sold those all over the world. Of course, we're talking about aviation today. As much as I like trains, I like planes even more. I hope that there are many of you who feel the same way in the room, and if not, you might be wrong. Planes fly, and you just can't beat it. We have finally our very first aviation demonstration project. I, of course, was adamant that we do this project, and I was very excited to see the application, even more excited when it scored very high, and so we could take it on. And I knocked over several other people to make sure that I was the one leading this project. So this project uses Pika as our main technology provider. They build the Pika spray or Pelican spray, which is the drone on the right side. This is not a drone as you often think of one, like a quadcopter, some little thing that flies around and makes a screeching noise. This thing is huge. It has a 40-foot wingspan. It can carry a significant payload. It runs fully autonomously, though it does have a human operator that keeps an eye on it. The aircraft is used in agricultural spray, but can be adapted for cargo, and they are working on a new generation of it that's even bigger with a bigger payload. In this project, there are 5 of them that are in operation. We have 2 in operation right now. There will be 5 in total, operating primarily at Victoria Island Farms outside of Stockton near Discovery Bay. These aircraft are able to fly lower and slower than piloted air tractors, which allows them to use less chemical, have less overspray. Because they're autonomous, they can fly at night, with which air tractors, piloted aircraft could not do in ag spray. Usually at night, there's less wind, so again, less overspray, less drift, less exposure. These aircraft are hot swappable. Batteries, they land, do everything on their own. The only human intervention is filling the tank and swapping the batteries. With battery swap, they can pretty much operate 24/7 round the clock. I've gotten to see these in action. It's pretty amazing. I wish I had I should have put a video in here so you could see it. I'll keep that in mind for next time. I'll talk briefly about the Sustainable Statewide Clean Aviation Initiative. This is our regulatory exploration effort. This is fairly early on in the process, so if you're interested, I do encourage you to seek more information. You can just Google California Statewide Clean Aviation Initiative. You will find it. They are exploring multiple options for ways to reduce emissions at airports. So that includes ground support equipment, auxiliary power units on the aircraft, GSE, and taxi takeoff and landing. So those things will be certainly more controversial. And briefly, just the types of aircraft to be included. Okay, so I think I was told to do about 10 to 15. I think we're there.
You can keep going.
That's it.
Oh, okay. Excellent.
Yeah.
I was excited to hear about all the different types of aircraft, and I was thinking planes, trains, and automobiles. It is
Yep.
actually very exciting. So my first kind of question is around the excitement that's on it and where aviation was always, as you mentioned, this kind of, I don't want to say taboo, but because like of the lines of where you can enforce and regulate things with interstate commerce and internationally, one of the things that's harder to get into for the state and watching, I guess, with a lot of the stuff at the airports where it looks like CARB's trying to, I don't want to say push the boundary, but establish a boundary of where they can support and regulate an effective change on it. But I was hoping to hear more about on that autonomous plane. Like how autonomous is this? Is this you? So it sounds like it's kind of like set it and forget it, except for swapping the batteries. Is it you program the routes into it? Do you say, hey, I need this area, and it just figures it out? How
Yeah, so
autonomous is it?
it is semi-autonomous right now. The goal is for it to be completely autonomous. It is FAA certified. It was the first aircraft of its type to receive full FAA certification, and that was over a year ago, actually, for full autonomous operations. For safety, they do have a pilot who keeps an eye on it, but in the future, they shouldn't need to. The way the process works for making it autonomous, introducing the aircraft to a new location, first, they need to ensure that they have a runway that meets specs. Usually, an existing runway that was used by a piloted aircraft will suffice, but they often have to widen the runway a little bit just to create a little more room for the filling area where the solar battery charger is. Oh, yeah, and all this is off grid. Solar battery charger area and where the pilot would be located, where the people would be, and to make sure that there's plenty of space. Just safety is, for anyone who's ever worked adjacent to aviation, safety is huge. It's the number one thing anyone talks about. and everything is done in thinking of safety. So after the site is configured, the aircraft starts running exploratory routes. They begin with just satellite and topographic imagery of the site that gives the aircraft a basic understanding. It has forward-facing and downward-facing LiDAR, radar, and ultrasonic sensors. It then maps all of the terrain. The human operators will map out known hazards, roadways, power lines, things like that. So it knows that those are there before it starts mapping. It doesn't map them by running into them. And then it maps the full site. And then for most operation, they click go or select a field and it does the work.
Okay. So $12 million project to demonstrate it. Ideally, in the future, these are going to be price competitive or on parity or have additional services that they can render, like flying at night that you mentioned
Yeah.
with
Actually,
traditional
so they're
operations.
believed to be at price parity now. The whole project is $12 million. There's administration, data collection.
Yeah.
There, there's that includes cash match and extra funding from the CEC. The aircraft themselves actually aren't outrageously expensive. And because of their operations, the fact that they can continue running with only one person who doesn't time out on flight hours and they can run all the time, they're very competitive. They're cheaper than
So a
conventional.
farm could go and buy one of these today. Are
They
they
are,
available
yeah,
today?
these are actually
Okay.
commercially available
And they're
freshly.
approved. There's probably some regulatory things that they have to go through with the FAA and everyone on it.
Yep, they're
But
fully certified, FAA certified.
okay, so then what's the next step for this type of autonomous plane beyond being an ag drone?
Yeah, so the two things that they're really working on in this, well, okay, so what they're really working on, what this project aims to accomplish is one, simply demonstrating the feasibility. The technology is commercial, but it hasn't been used yet in the United States. So this will show, and through a public process with which involves like public funding, meaning that all of the reports, all of the data from this report will be publicly available, makes the case for this technology to be used elsewhere, helps Pica to get more customers, allows them to develop new generations. What they are trying to get out of this is doing some serious durability testing on these aircraft. One of them is designated as the workhorse, and this aircraft is flying maximum missions per day every day of the growing season and will through the end of the project. They are going to be tweaking everything, testing each individual component, making sure the product is the best they can be. It can be.
Mhm.
Then they're developing these larger platforms for longer range and heavier payloads. And they really have an eye for cargo delivery to rural locations. And this can also be emergency response. So when you need to get medical supplies to a place or equipment to a place really quickly, an autonomous vehicle drone can get there quickly and land on very small runways or no runway at all, getting supplies to an island, for example, much faster than a boat. That's what they're eyeing.
I think that's really good, I guess, kind of future planning on it. And being able to demonstrate it at this seems like it could really move things forward. And one thing you mentioned that it's the legislators that set a lot of the budget. You guys don't get to pick and choose where the budget comes from. But I want to tell everyone that's listening here that you can talk to your legislators. You can also talk to your air district and CARB and get involved with them. And if you do have a startup company or a company that thinks they can play in this space, I'd encourage you to reach out to your air district CARB and your regulators on them. Could you share a little bit about maybe a different, because it sounds like Pica, they were the only ones that were FAA approved to do this, so maybe it was a bit easier for them. But can you share an example of a company that started working with CARB, got involved, did some projects and scale and what the process of that was like for them or from the CARB perspective?
Yeah, Pica does fit the mold. They're a little further along than some of the companies they work with just because they were already certified, but this was their first demonstration project. A lot of the companies that we work with in our projects, big companies that you've heard of, like Volvo and Tesla, but lots of smaller technology providers often that are providing individual powertrain systems or data collection or EV infrastructure, the most important thing to keep in mind is that these projects are complicated. Also important to keep in mind that there's no funding for Shift right now. All of our current funding is tied up in projects, and we are not receiving an appropriation this year. So again, to your point, that if
But
Shift
you
is
got to get
something
ahead
that
of the
is,
curve, right?
yeah,
You can't
yeah,
wait for the
really the
solicitation to
hierarchy is
come out.
ensuring that the funding is available, which it's not right now, unfortunately, and then working on putting together a project idea. The best projects were figured out long before a solicitation was ever released. These are competitive solicitations, so only the top scoring projects will be offered grant agreements, but it's really important that the ideas be fleshed out very early on, that you get a project team together. These are really complicated. You need a lot of people on your team to make this work. You have to partner with an eligible grantee. So private companies cannot be a grantee, but they can be part of a project. So you need to partner with an eligible grantee, which is either a California-based nonprofit or a air district or a governmental entity like a city or municipality. Those are the only eligible grantees. So you have to start talking to people, figuring out who you would work with, what the ideas for the project, and just have everything ready in the wings. At the very least, you are getting together the right people to do the project yourself, and maybe those people become customers of yours. And in the best case scenario, we get funding, we get to release this solicitation, and you already have the plan figured out.
Yeah, I'd say prepare to scale your company regardless of what the CARB does. And if you communicate with your legislators and CARB and the world about what you're doing, you'll probably find that the solicitations go out are thinking about companies that are looking to scale for problems that CARB has on things. We have got a question in the comments about hydrogen in aviation. I know there's been some companies focusing on hydrogen in aviation, some that have worked out, some that are still in the, okay, I guess that haven't worked out, and some in the early stage things. What has CARB seen or engaged with around hydrogen in aviation?
We haven't had a whole lot of engagement as we've talked about. Aviation has long been untouchable, just as far as jurisdiction goes. And also, until fairly recently, zero emission aviation was not really anything beyond a concept. But in the last 5 to 7 years, it's really just started happening. I have worked with a company called Zero Avia. They have they're working with a Dornier, I think it's a 12-seater aircraft in the UK. They were actually based in California. They moved to the UK because the UK was offering better investments in the technology. I'm glad they found that. I was sad to lose them, but I'm glad that they're getting the investment they needed. They are pretty
Yeah.
far along. The other company that's pretty far along is Joby. And Joby, they have built I think it's a, a six rotor craft, tilt rotor design, so it can do vertical takeoff and landing as well as pretty fast forward flight. They're based in the Bay Area, and Joby, they started with a battery electric aircraft, which they are now at the last stage of type certification with the FAA. They also have a hydrogen aircraft that is in the certification process. And one of my colleagues in the Bay Area reported that just last week they saw the hydrogen one in flight testing, which is very exciting. I'm mostly jealous I didn't get to see it, but I will be seeing Joby next week at the Lift Summit, so I hope that they have their fuel cell aircraft there. Fuel cell, definitely, it's happening. The primary considerations with all things aviation is weight and safety. So batteries have a weight problem, and hydrogen has at least a perceived safety problem. And so the primary barriers to hydrogen aviation is going to be like on the infrastructure side and certification and safety. Like it's going to filling up a hydrogen aircraft is going to be something FAA has ever seen. It's going to involve a lot of infrastructure there. And then, of course, flight is very energy intensive. It's the most energy intensive form of transportation. So it's going to require quite a bit of fuel. And for longer missions or heavier payloads, we're going to have to consider things well beyond just compressed hydrogen gas and looking at cryogenic liquid and perhaps some even more outlandish options to get the energy density.
I think there's some people in the audience that love cryogenic hydrogen here and may
Who
have heard
doesn't love
some questions.
cryogenic hydrogen?
Yeah.
Yeah.
It just sounds
Um,
cool.
one thing I saw in there was about we have Jai talking about sustainable aviation fuels, and you can reach out to the air district on that. Matt might have a specific person on it, but on sustainable aviation fuels, I feel like they have a great amount of potential because they're a drop-in replacement for existing aviation fuels, and you have ones that are more, some of them claim to be carbon negative, but at the same time, you have all the air districts that are they're tasked with reducing local air emissions, local emission sources. And sustainable aviation fuels don't reduce local emissions. They net emissions on the grand scale, but your local emissions, I think of the executive airport where the Air Quality Metro, Sacramento Metro Air Quality Management District notes that there's pollution in the community there from the metro airport. How does the air board and air districts think about that? Because they want to reduce overall emissions, but they also have that mandate for local emissions.
I think it's important that we keep in mind that sustainable aviation fuel can reduce greenhouse gas emissions, but not necessarily toxic air contaminants, not NOx and PM. It's still combustion and it's still going to have those byproducts. The actual makeup of the combustion exhaust for SAF is a little different from conventional jet fuel, but still has emissions. So actually switching to SAF doesn't really do anything substantial for us on reducing NOx, which we really need to do, or PM, which those are the primary considerations for near airport exposure. So that's really not going to be a solution. Sustainable aviation fuel is increasing dramatically. We've entered into some collaborative partnerships to increase its use. It's still worth doing. If it's a drop in fuel and at least gets us carbon reductions, then we should do it, and we are doing that. But we have to keep in mind that it's not the end solution. It does not reduce emissions. It is not zero.
I see Mike commenting that 50, that he thought it was 50 to 90% lower. That's a pretty big range there, Mike. If it's a
And
little
it
bit
de
lower, that's always good, but it's still a pretty big range.
yeah, and
Cutting in
it
half is great.
depends on the actual mix. Oh, and of course, there's limitations right now that you can only blend, I think, up to 15% SAF. Like you can't actually just put 100% SAF in an aircraft.
All right.
Eventually, I assume that would go away, but for now, that is a limitation.
We have a question from Chris Boyden because he's curious about the ground support equipment and supporting upcoming projects or what projects have been around fully electric. Chris, you're gonna have to tell me what APOS is and cooling equipment.
Yeah,
I know
no
you've probably
problem.
told me before, but if you just share with us and then Matt can give some feedback.
Yeah, I have a little experience or just adjacent experience next to aircraft and auxiliary power units. We all see
Okay.
these vehicles. So there's a lot of vehicles on tarmac, and you have a truck and a trailer, or a truck that has a generator on it, and it's kind of like a shore power system. So the aircraft, it doesn't have to run its turbines to generate power. You can plug into something stationary or something even like a ground support mobility equipment, and it's got a generator on it, and it can output three-phase 400 hertz power and power the aircraft while it's parked at its terminal. And I think a lot of those are traditional diesel electric systems, but it makes a lot of sense to, plug into the grid, charge some batteries, have export power, have all of this stuff be non-emit, very low emissions type equipment. And Matt mentioned that in his slides. Yeah.
I guess I
Uh,
should get what uh, auxiliary power units are. The S just threw me off.
oh, no
Um,
problem.
but I think
Yeah.
because a lot of your questions or things is the technology that's currently built is built around having these constant generators on them and might not be as efficient as one with batteries might need to be. So yeah, Matt, reducing emissions from auxiliary power units.
Yeah, and that is one of the targets of this regulation. There's already been a lot of work done on this at California's major airports to reduce the use of APUs. Some airports require already that if gate power is available, just literally connecting to the grid at the gate through the umbilical, that they be required to do so and not use the APU. So there's two different things that usually happen for gate power. There's the actual electrical connection, and then there's preconditioned air. Most of what the APU would be powering while on the ground is actually the air conditioning. So simply by hooking that up, you basically offload all of that work to something that's connected to the grid already. You'll often see these, they're on the bottom of the jetway, and it's like a big box, and that's usually the air conditioning. But yeah, this is absolutely something where we need to be reducing emissions on the ground. APUs are a huge source of emissions at airports, and most of the time they're not necessary. A grid connection can be made.
We have a lot
Got a
of comments
couple
around
comments for you.
for around sustainable aviation fluid. I do want to also ask Matt if there's a specific person that they should reach out to around sustainable aviation fluid or fuel so that they can get some good feedback around that. And I just want to make sure it doesn't dominate our entire conversation. But Jai, I see
Yeah,
you have your hand raised.
I'll just briefly say, please look up the Statewide Clean Aviation Initiative. The team that's running that, I think it's overseen by Mo Chen. There should be an email. You'll find the CARB webpage, and there should be an email contact, and that's the team to talk to about SAF.
Yeah, I wanted to mention that if you know about this company called Airmine, which is doing DAC, direct air capture, actually CEC has funded for a pilot scale or a bigger scale unit in Sacramento. They have already done lab scale and in-house studies where they have proven that they can do direct air capture and produce 99% pure carbon dioxide, and they already are selling it to their next door brewery. And they have their own technology, plus there are companies like Breathe Sciences which even won the X Prize for carbon footprint reduction that converts carbon dioxide to methanol, and they already have customers. Why would we not encourage these technologies? There is no question of NOx here, because if it is 99% pure carbon dioxide getting converted into methanol, there is no question of NOx. I think there are technologies available today which are economically viable, and probably they don't know how to.
It sounds like the state is funding some of those too, and it's great to
Yeah,
hear another one happening in California or in the Sacramento region, along with I know there's Grey Rock and Infinium working here with their engineering teams on projects as well too. And so reach out to the statewide clean aviation initiative. Make sure
yeah,
everyone knows about it because part of it is that we have to share it with everybody, otherwise things get missed. Sorry,
yeah,
Matt.
and for carbon capture and control, that's actually a whole separate initiative that CARB does have. We work with the Governor's Office of Business and Economic Development, GoBiz, and I think the CEC and another state agency. State's really big. So I know that there is a whole initiative around carbon capture, direct air capture. I don't work on any of that, so unfortunately, I don't know much of the details, but I know that it does exist, and I'm sure you can find it with a quick Google search and find the right people to reach out to.
All right, thank you.
Yeah, I'm gonna say I think we're economically we're bigger than the UK, and that company's going to come back just because of our economic power.
They a company goes where the money is, and we
Yeah,
didn't have any money for aviation at the time, so they moved out there in 2019. I tried to get a project going for them, but wasn't able to. But I'm glad Zero Aviate. Hopefully we will see them again in the US.
Yeah, hopefully around that. Definitely. So we got a fun one. Has CARB invested in magnetic launchers for planes? I figure we're talking
No.
about the coolness of planes. Aircraft carriers are at the peak of it, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
No. And I only laugh because it sounds funny, but it's a great idea for certain applications.
Mhm.
There's a company called Zipline, and they have a similar model to Pica, their cargo version though, except for their drones are much smaller. They're very small. I think their wingspan is only like probably 6 feet, and they do use a launcher to launch them. They're used for delivering medical supplies to rural communities. So you can have like a central pharmacy and you can load up medication or medical supplies into each one. It launches autonomously, goes, drops its payload, and comes back to base. So yeah, a launcher would make sense there. I don't think that for passenger air travel that would be an acceptable. So they have to train fighter pilots to deal with the G's of an aircraft carrier launch of a slingshot.
Okay. So you pushed people out of the way for the job that you have right now because you were so excited about it. So I really want to hear what excites you the most right now about zero emissions aviation.
Honestly, that it's happening. This is something I've been waiting for a really long time, and it was always on the horizon. All of a sudden, it's just started appearing. Multiple companies, not just like one or two, like a whole industry has suddenly appeared. And all of this is really thanks to the work that's been done, I mean, around the world, but really driven by California's policies and investments over the last couple decades. Like all of the technology that is now finally ready for applications in aviation were developed and cut their teeth in light duty and then heavy duty vehicles. Like we have to make all of these advancements, efficiency, improve power to make them suitable for aviation. And it's just taken all of this time, all the opportunities for manufacturers to produce, refine, revise their technologies to finally be suitable.
I think that's absolutely true. And it is, I didn't realize how far we were along until you first presented at SAC EV several months ago. So I really appreciate that. Now, one thing I on your LinkedIn, I noticed that you've been an entrepreneur of sorts in your past and are today. So if you're talking to a clean tech entrepreneurial startup, a pretty small company, maybe a company that has either no revenue and a couple million in investment or has been able to get 100,000 or a million in revenue. So a really small company, and they have a solution that they think could be applied to this. What steps would you advise that they take to be able to get themselves ready for one, potentially growing their company in California, and two, working with the state?
Yeah. I think the very number one thing, find friends. Like find your tribe, find companies that are aligned with you that you can work with, whether they end up being your customers or just your partners. Find the people that you can work together with. It's tough out there to be a small company. It's tough out there to get noticed. You really need good partners to be visible. And especially when it comes to working with the state, when after you've been able to get out there and find partners who you would be in a project with the state, like that is when you really start to refine, you keep an eye on state policies. The other thing, the reason why it's important to have a good team is because if you're a small company, like I'm a company of one, I know a lot about the state. I've worked at the state for 10 years and it is a nightmare to do compliance. Like it is so hard to know what I'm supposed to be doing just to not get thrown in jail, let alone like how to interface with the state of California to participate in incentive programs or follow regulatory policies that are always changing. That's really hard. And if you are a small company, you do not have the time or resources to be doing all of that. So riding the coattails of a larger company that has more resources, or at least that you can share some of that work with, I think that really helps to stay informed and to be ready when an opportunity presents itself.
I think that's some absolutely salient advice, especially you don't go try to do it. You can go fast maybe alone, but you can go a lot further together with someone.
Yep.
And as we come up to about 10:45 here, I want to say, is any last call to actions that you have for the community, or how you want people to get involved with the State Clean Aviation Institute and with the kind of 3-year cycle funding?
Yeah, so the important things, if aviation and the regulation development is really important to you, please absolutely get involved with the statewide Clean Aviation Initiative. You can just Google this, you will find the CARB page. You'll be able to sign up for emails. They do have upcoming workshops. Then you can review the recordings and slides from their last 2 workshops. They've only had 2 so far, so you're still getting in early. For funding, you can, again, either on the CARB website or just from Google, search Clean Transportation Incentives, CARB, and you will find that. Please sign up, register for our mailing list, and you'll be notified when we have workshops and work groups. We actually have we have one tomorrow. Oh my God, I forgot. Yeah, we have one tomorrow. So I believe it starts at 8:30, 9. Please look at the website and find out for me. I'm sharing slides for that, actually. I'll find out what time it is. But we would love to have you there. It would be a great opportunity to get acquainted with the process of the annual funding plan and what's happening this year. If you're on the email list for Clean Transportation Incentives, you'll also get notifications about the long-term heavy-duty investment strategy. We'll have a little bit of public process for that later in the year, probably late summer, early fall.
I think that's a great call to action to get involved. Hear Matt talking about how excited he is about electric and zero emissions vehicles in aviation. Well, guess what? The state doesn't make any, so they want to talk to you about it.
Yeah.
And with that, I'm going to go ahead and wrap this up. I want to thank all of you for coming and joining this conversation. It's the conversation that we love to have here at CleanStart. Matt, thank you so much for taking the time to share with us what's happening at CARB, giving us a look into California's investments in zero emissions aviation, where they're headed, talking with us about all the different things that you have seen. For anyone who wants to learn more about the programs, go to CARB's website, look up the programs, make sure that you're awake tomorrow morning so that you can go and give feedback to these initiatives, because the thing that makes California work is everyone participating, businesses and individuals with agencies like CARB, your local air district, and the legislator. So thank you for sharing all these programs, from Shift to the new one coming up of Sustainable SCI.
Well,
Look it up.
Sky.
Sky. Okay,
Is
that's
it
easy.
clever,
Shift to
right?
Sky.
Yeah.
That makes perfect sense on it. And if you enjoyed this conversation, be sure to subscribe to Clean Start so you don't miss future events like this. Thank you, everyone, for joining us today. Thank you, Matt. Big round of applause for Matt, everyone.
Yeah,
Just
thanks so much,
before we do
man.
it.
Thank you.
And of course, none of this happens without our sponsors: SMUD, Chico Start, Fresno State, River City, Witten Law, and Baker Tilly. If you get a chance, learn about what they do and what they're doing and how they're investing in our community. It would mean a lot to us if you connect with them. And don't miss our upcoming events if you found this useful. We have upcoming meetups on the grid, mobility, and generation. Additionally, we'll be out there at Ecos Earth Day. And if you're going to San Francisco for Climate Week, I'm going to be there all week. I'll be releasing a schedule of all the stuff that's happening, a lot of it at places like 9-0. Make sure that you engage with the community and make those friends that Matt said that you need to make to go far in this. So connect with us. Find us at cleanstart.org. We're active on LinkedIn. Just search CleanStart. You'll either get us, a cleaning company, or a suppository company. You can guess which one does the clean energy. Until next time, thank you for joining us.